3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Good afternoon, everybody. It's another Wednesday at 5 p.m., and you know what that means. Fun and frivolity with the Dennis and Andy show.
That's right.
I threw down
comics and all the great stuff that happens on Wednesday, the quick flips, all the stuff. And we always have usually a really cool special guest.
That's right. That's right. We do. So welcome to the show. We've got Randy Howell in the house. Hello, Randy.
I think Randy was first in, too.
Randy was first in. Hyper Kaiju. Hello, Hyper. Thank you for posting the link to Giant Size Two-Fisted Manly Tales, which is Graham Nolan's campaign, and Chuck Dixon is writing a story for it. So, guys, go check that out. Marcus, hello. And all right, well, without further ado, I don't really want to talk to Dennis anymore. I'd rather be entertained, so I'm going to bring on Chuck.
Don't diss your co-host, man. He's sitting right next to you.
That's okay.
Not for long.
What?
Just move you out of the way. Oh! Usually Andy has control of the screen, and if I say something, if I'm doing it from my office, my studio, he just removes me from the screen altogether, so then it's just him. So here he can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Hyper says, and I noticed that in the movie. I'm wearing my Riddler glasses. I did notice in the movie that he had the glasses like I do with the clear frame. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
No, I even called them Andy glasses.
Well,
that makes me question everything you do and say now.
There you go.
JP Roca, hello. So, Chuck, will you be seeing the Batman?
I hear it's coming on HBO Max next month, so I'll probably take a look at it then.
Are you serious? It's going to be next month?
April 19th.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So literally, it's going to end in the theater, and probably the next day it's going to pop in because it is shorter theater runs.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, it may hang out in theaters for a while if it keeps making the money it's making, but
I kind of figure it'll do both. I just didn't think the overlap would be that quick. Holy crap! Because we both saw it over the weekend, and I actually want to see it again. I didn't think it felt. I mean, it's 3 hours, but I don't know. It clicked by pretty quick for me, at least. So
yeah,
I liked it. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I had to get up and use the restroom twice. I drank way too much, but we all kind of knew that was going to happen.
Yeah,
That's the beauty of watching at home.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right. Well, let's start it off. You always have your question that you like to ask. What are you?
Yep. Some of our viewers may know you very well. Other ones might not. So we always like to find out, what was your origin story? How did you get into comics in the first place? And we'll figure that out.
I really don't remember a time when I wasn't into comics. I mean, I was reading comics before I could read.
Okay.
Just looking at the pictures. And it just fascinated me. I just love the medium. I love the characters too, but mostly I just love the medium, telling stories in a series of static pictures. And, it was the only thing I wanted to do. I had no plan B, and I didn't go to college. I just kept making runs at DC and Marvel. And at the time I was making the runs, they were in really bad financial shape, so there was no hiring. So I did work in fanzines and stuff like that, worked a whole bunch of dead-end jobs, drove an ice cream truck, worked as a security guard. I mean, anything you can think of. And then the 80s happened. And basically, if you had a pulse, you could get into comics in the 80s because there was this explosion of small independent publishers. So
I didn't make it.
I got simultaneous breaks. I got given Airboy at Eclipse Comics. And at the same time, Larry Hama hired me to be a writer on Savage Sword of Conan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so they
that's
both
cool.
happened like within weeks of each other.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So I was able to quit my job and set a date with my fiance and get on with life as a full-time comic book writer.
What was Eclipse paying back then? Do you remember?
They were all paying $35 a page for writing.
Oh, even Marvel was, huh?
Even Marvel was, and then Marvel gave me my first raise to $50. I think Eclipse always paid me $35. I never got a raise there.
Yeah, because you did.
But you know me, Andy. I wrote so much; it was a good living.
Well, no, I know. Well, I was going to say you did more than just Airboy, because I'm trying to remember the book that I remember, and it was more, being an artist, the art, and then obviously you wrote it, wasn't it? And I think it started out as a backup. Didn't they do Strike, and then Tom drew it, right?
Yeah, Tom Lyle drew Strike.
Yeah,
that came along later. Basically, Eclipse, I just became the go-to guy at Eclipse whenever they needed material. And then, Larry kept shopping me around Marvel once I proved I was reliable. So I had a lot of work. I was doing okay, even at the low page rates.
well, yeah. I know
Conan was a royalty payer, which was kind of a well-kept secret at Marvel. Savage Sword of Conan did okay on royalties.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because that was the magazine, right?
Yeah. It didn't sell in comic shops, but it really sold on newsstands.
Oh. Any idea? Now I'm just curious. Do you have any? Do you have recollection of what the sales were like for that?
Well, at the time, it was selling 30,000 in comic shops, which is a respectable number now, but was terrible. Right. And I think some months it did as much as 250,000 on the newsstand.
Get out of here! Did it really?
Yeah,
Holy,
it was a solid royalty. I was getting paid more in royalties than I was to write it.
That's what I was going to think. Yeah, because I know what the percentage breakdowns were. Holy crap, that is amazing.
Yeah, I had a big following. We used to get a lot of letters from housewives and senior citizens' homes.
Really? Do you see any royalties from the reprint they do of the Savage Conan stuff, or no?
Yeah. But Marvel's royalties now are horrible.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. I get a statement every now and then, and
I go to the bank and I say, I got another Mickey Mouse check. And it literally is a Mickey Mouse. It has Mickey Mouse on it. And it's a Mickey Mouse amount. It's like, low two figures.
Oh, my God. I never thought, I switched over to direct deposit a long time ago. So I don't even, I haven't seen an actual physical check from either one of those companies in forever.
Yeah, I do that with everybody but Marvel. So I won't let them direct deposit.
Oh, yeah. What
I hope it costs them more money to send me a check.
There you go. Well, yeah, man. Stick it to those guys. What so after Savage Sword, what else did you do before you started working at DC, and how did you get the first gig at DC then?
Well, Archie Goodwin put me on Alien Legion at Epic.
Yep.
And then Carl Potts liked my stuff. He was the creator of Alien Legion. He liked my stuff. So he put me on Moon Knight. And then I worked for everybody else. I worked for Apple Comics and then I started campaigning to get on the Punisher. So I really wanted to write the Punisher. And so I started doing that. And, so I was, building a name, but mostly just getting a lot of work.
Right.
And, I worked at Now Comics. I worked at New Comics. Every little upstart that came along, I worked for them until the checks dried up. And then out of the blue, I hear from Denny O'Neil, who I had met a couple of times, but he never showed any interest in my work. And he called me and said that he had read my Airboy run, and he liked how I wrote a young character. Would I want to take a shot at a Robin miniseries? And so I went up and talked with him and took the job.
Oh, see, I knew you wrote the Robin miniseries. Once again, I bought it with Tom's art and stuff, but I didn't know that was your first work for DC. So
yeah, I'd never done anything for them before. And then, so I show up and I do the Robin miniseries, and I asked them while we were working on it, I said, what do you think this will sell? And they said, it'll sell around 175,000 because that's what the Catwoman miniseries we did recently sold.
Yeah.
I said, okay, that's respectable.
Oh yeah.
But it sold a whole lot more than that. I mean, my first job at DC was a out of the park home run.
Really?
Yeah, because they kept going back to print. Every time I would go up to DC, someone would come running out and going, "We're going back to print. We're going back to print." Like they were real happy to see me. So in those days, they were real happy to see me.
Dude, that's awesome. Because how long after the first one did they decide before they did the second one? Then
it was like the next year.
Okay, yeah.
And then the second one was even bigger. The sales were bigger because they did all those alternate covers and gewgaws and gimmicks. So the second one paid out. I called my first house the house that Robin built.
No way, really?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Was huge. That was huge.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you went over to DC, were you still doing stuff over at Marvel then?
Oh yeah, I was still, I started working on like What If. I did Law Dog with Flint Henry.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a lot of Punisher stuff. I mean, the time I was doing Robin, probably like the second Robin miniseries, I was writing all of Punisher's monthlies. So there was a point there for about 4 months. I was doing 8 monthlies. Right.
That's what I was going to ask you. What's the most you've done in a month? Would you say it was 8?
Yeah, eight monthlies is, I could handle that at a stretch. Back then. Right. I really wasn't doing anything else. My wife was raising the kids and
yeah. Was that all full script?
Oh yeah. I started when I started doing Conan, they wanted Marvel style, and I didn't like the results. And
really?
I talked with Gary Quapis. He was my Conan artist. I said, look, let me write a full script for you. If you don't like it, we won't do it again, but I think you'll like it better. And he was a little hesitant, but then when he got it, he says, yeah, this works better for me.
Oh, that's cool.
Because you get the Xerox pages back, and here's Conan yelling and hollering. I'm like, I have no idea what he's saying. Dialogue. I would come up with stuff for him to be yelling, and I'm like, this is ridiculous because he's always yelling. Every artist would draw him yelling. I would come up with stuff like Crom count the dead, and it was just getting silly. So I said, look, let me full script it, and then you'll know what he's saying. So the pictures will match the words.
Right. When you did Robin, did Denny was the editor? Did he have a jumping off point in terms of this is what we want story wise, or did he come up with something and let me see what I think of it?
Well, he said that I had been reading the titles because I loved what Alan Grant was doing. So I had been reading the titles, so I was familiar with what was going on with Tim Drake. And he said what they wanted him to do was that Batman basically sends Tim Drake on a worldwide tour to learn martial arts and stuff like that. The same way that Bruce Wayne went around the world learning from all these different, detectives and stuff like that. So he sent, the idea was he was going to send Tim Drake overseas to start his schooling on being Robin, to become Robin. And beyond that, it was all left up to me. I came up with the idea that he goes to France. When he gets to France, the sensei he's supposed to meet is basically senile. And so immediately the plot line begins deconstructing, and he has to do stuff on his own and act independently.
Now, when you approach something, was that, I'm trying to remember, was that 4 or 5 or 6 issues? I don't remember.
I think it was 5.
That's what I thought too, which is an odd number because usually they do 4 or 6 now. But So when you start something like that for your own process, do you write like a whole outline of what's going to happen through the 4 and then break it down into the separate issues? And like, what's your process for something like that?
Basically, I just typed up like 2 pages for Denny, just telling him the story, and basically for his approval. And he just said, I like it, just go ahead. And I just started scripting. I mean, I knew I had a general idea where I was going, but I don't do a lot of outlining. And every writer works differently. I mean, some writers write like detailed biographies of every character and stuff like that. I just don't do a lot of that. It's a lot, mostly seat of the pants, trusting the material, trusting the characters. I mean, when you're working on Batman and Robin, the audience is on your side. They want it to be a good story.
Right.
They know the characters, they love them. So you got that going for you. You can rely on that. Not too much, though, because then you're just, phoning it in. But,
Yeah.
I had that and, all the enthusiasm I was running on.
Right. Now, how did you, because, I met Tom Lyle when I was 15 and he was still living in Maryland. I met him at a Towson show up above Baltimore. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, he was the first professional I met. And at the time, I'm pretty sure he was working on strike. And he was great. Even throughout the Kubert school, we stayed in touch. He'd send me pencil copies. And, it's funny. I would tell people at the time, I can't remember if I ever told you this, that when I was my first year at the Kubert school, Tex Blaisdell was a teacher of mine. And Tex was doing background inking at the time for Bob Smith, who was inking Starman. Oh, wow. And Tex liked my inks even in first year. And he was like, you want to do some background inking on Starman? And I was like, obviously I'm not getting paid and I'm I'm a freshman at the Kubert. So I'm like, hell yeah. So it was just cool that I was able to do background inking over Tom's stuff, like just 3 years later after, meeting him and stuff.
That's cool.
So, but how did you meet Tom? I assume it was at Eclipse, but how did you actually meet? Or
well, I went to a convention. I can't remember where it was. And, it was some little podunk show. And there's Tom, in some VFW hall, drawing away. And he had artwork and I never met him before. And I'm looking at the stuff and I'm like, he's working on a comic called G.I. Rambot, which was as bad as it sounds. And I said, would you, I need a new artist for Skywolf, the backups on Airboy.
Yes, that's right.
He said, I said, would you be interested? And he goes, yeah. So I said, well, can I have some of these Xeroxes to send to Eclipse? And he gave me some. I sent them and, they hired him immediately. So
cool.
We did Skywolf for quite a while. So that's how we met and started working together.
That was the other one I was trying to remember was the backup. That was Skywolf because Strike didn't run. Do you remember how many issues Strike ran for?
Maybe 6.
Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't that long. He drew them all, right?
Yeah, he drew all the leads, and then we had these phony Golden Age backups.
Okay.
That were fun because we actually fooled people into thinking they were real Golden Age backups.
Well, did he draw those too, or somebody else?
No, we had Daniel Close drew one.
No way.
Yeah, and Fred Fawcett, the guy that drew Mandrake the Magician for a long time, he laid one of them out for another artist.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because but they were, and I would write these essays, these long essays on the history of Happy Comics, which was the comic company we made up. Because I told Dean Mullaney, who the publisher at Eclipse, I said the only way a superhero works is if he has this long legacy, this background to the Golden Age. So why don't we create superheroes who have a legacy to a Golden Age that we just make up?
Right.
So it was fun.
Oh no, that's not. That just reminds me. Remember when Marvel did that whole stint with the Sentry, saying, "Oh, we found some." We were at CrossGen at the time.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, we found these old sketches," and they made up some dude's name. But anybody that knew art was like, "What are you talking about? That's John Romita Sr."
You could tell who it was.
No, I mean you can't say, "Oh yeah." I mean, it's like, come on, Marvel. If you're going to try and sell this, you got to get somebody that nobody knows their style, and then have them ape a Golden Age style. You just had John Romita draw the way he draws,
right,
and make up this, which was cool. I love that character shot he did of the Sentry, but it was like, you're not fooling anybody, man. Come on.
No, they didn't. They just didn't get this stuff. They didn't. It's distressing to me how many people working professionally in comics today, especially editors, no idea the history.
Oh my God, it is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
These days, because, well, I mean, obviously you started working probably, what year would you say was your first professional gig?
86 is the first year I worked full time most of the year.
So, I mean, realistically, you broke in 5 years before me, because I started in 91. But, just from reading books as a fan and stuff, you would see creators you'd see names as editors that you'd go, wait a second, that guy was a freelancer at one point, whether it be a writer or an artist. Because I remember talking to my parents and they'd be like, well, where do you see this going? And I said, I don't know. I said, I'd like to work for him basically and retire with one of the companies, a la like a Buscema, Kane, somebody like that,
right.
who was obviously, in the early 90s, late 80s, still, working. But
right.
My point was, I said, or you see some of these guys end up taking a desk job as an editor, and I could see doing that. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Right.
And then, now it's just, oh, you just graduated college and you know how to read. Fantastic.
You someday want to work at Vanity Fair? Well, this will look good on your resume. So
right.
Sit down. What's a comic book? Oh, here, read some. I mean, when I made like a short stop at DC right after, I guess like a year or so after leaving CrossGen, and I did a little bit of work for them, and it was all new people. And,
oh yeah.
And I show up at the New York offices just to see a few people I knew, and they offer me work. And I said, well, I'm in New York for a few days. When is this due? And it had a short deadline. I said, well, give me an office. I'll get to work. And so they gave me a spare office, and I had a continuity question. And I go to their continuity editor. And the continuity editor is a guy sitting playing with his iPod in a room where there are who's on the shelf, the DC who's who.
Yeah.
So I asked him a question about some character, and he pulls down a who's who and starts leafing through it looking for the character.
And you're thinking, yeah, I could do that.
I could. So you don't know anything about comics, and you're the continuity editor. Because I don't know if you remember, I mean, they used to have Peter Sanderson.
Yeah,
that was like a living encyclopedia of everything DC. I mean, he had an answer to every question.
Yeah, I've got the first DC big hardcover that he did, and then I think he do a Marvel one as well.
I think he did.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I'm pretty sure he was pretty well versed in both.
I mean, because when the animation guys showed up in the 90s, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, they just handed them over to Sanderson because they had all these questions, and they said he's got all the answers.
Oh, okay, cool.
Not some guy leafing through a who's. What was that character again?
The problem is that that's just true in everything. When everybody knows I'm an X-Men fan, so I mean, I go all the way back, and you kind of remember a lot of the stories and all the characters, and then you see the new people that sit down trying to write it, and it's like, that didn't happen. That's not right. Where is the continuity check? I'm also a Star Trek fan, trying to watch Picard right now, and they're asking the stupidest questions, and I'm looking at it going, he's answered that through 7 seasons of The Next Generation, that very question. You didn't even bother to watch the show that you're writing for, because it's painfully obvious. As a fan, this stuff's just killing us.
It is on every level. I mean, the focus is not on telling entertaining stories anymore. It's not on being true to what we all like. I mean, it's like the recent Star Trek movies. They decided that the problem with Star Trek was Star Trek itself. And so they made movies that they bled all of the stuff we love about Star Trek out of it to make 3 movies that are unrecognizable. I mean, okay, they're in the right costumes, but this isn't Star Trek at all. Right. And now I think the breaking point, I think the 9/11 for woke entertainment is this Lord of the Rings thing on Amazon.
Oh, it is.
Everyone is pissed off about it. Everyone is pissed off, and they have a right to be. I mean, I don't care if you're an oppressed minority, you're upset about this because it's stupid.
I have never seen one topic bring all of us nerds together in unison, and I mean across. I mean, those of us that role play, because I'm a role player, all my role playing friends are upset. My Tolkien fans, they're all upset. Anybody who loved the Peter Jackson movies that were at least relatively faithful, right. That was, they're all upset. Everybody's upset. And then even the people who don't know anything about it are upset just because of the premise.
That would be me. I mean, besides the Lord of the Rings movies, I never really read any of this stuff. But when this happened with Amazon, just reading stuff online, I was like, that's ridiculous. But the one that I can relate to is the Kevin Smith He-Man stuff, Masters of the Universe on Netflix last year, because I am a big He-Man fan. And I watched that and I'm like, what is this? I mean, I bought the toy because the toy looks awesome, but just watching the show, I was like, this is and we both watched and we're like, this is garbage.
I grew up with He-Man and I remember almost all the episodes, and I was like, I couldn't tell you verbatim, but I was like, oh, I was so excited. The animation looked good. We were so excited. We heard some rumors that due to Clownfish TV that, well, maybe Kevin Smith is lying. And I'm like, no, he wouldn't do that. No, that's my Dogma boy. I mean, come on, Jay and Silent Bob, you wouldn't do that. And we watched it, and I could have pulled my hair out. I'm like, oh my God, this has nothing to do with He-Man. I mean, what garbage. That was the first time I got really, really upset.
Yeah, it was. Oh, Randy, thank you very much. Randy, thank you for the $5. Said Gandalf to Amazon, you shall not pass.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Randy.
That is awesome of you. But seriously, that Lord of the Rings, I mean, I've read the books, I've played the games. I'm not a scholar into it like some of my friends are, but what they're doing has nothing to do with anything which is the basis of the legend of Lord of the Rings. There was no intention. There was nothing written. Doesn't matter. They are literally just making stuff up and saying, if you don't agree with it, you're sexist or racist.
I mean, it's not good news for anybody, this equity nonsense, because, when they started showing preview pictures of the characters, and here's this, this black kid as an elf. And it's like, okay, that's wrong, and it's demeaning.
Yes.
Right.
It's like you couldn't find another way to get characters of different ethnicities into the story. And there is a way. I mean, in the last Lord of the Rings movie, they have those guys show up on the elephants. Yeah. And they are clearly not white. Okay. They're from lands to the south, and they're on the map. I mean, and they have obviously Arabic sounding names, these places. Why not make a story about them? It's in the Tolkien universe. Instead, you're going to want us to think that, okay, there's black dwarves and black elves. It's like, well, where did they come from? Why didn't we see them before?
Right.
And because it's a prequel, were they all exterminated? I mean,
right. Well, that is what makes it worse, because it's a prequel. At least if you said, oh, no, this takes place X amount of years after, you go, okay. But
no, it's not okay. It's never okay.
No, I know. But you know what I'm saying.
They're dressed up like dollar store Robin Hood characters. And it's like, it's just stupid. I talked to a guy a couple of weeks ago, and he's an Egyptian guy. And he's raising tens of millions of dollars on his own to make movies outside of Hollywood. And he says, I want to make the stories that Hollywood won't make. And what he's making is he's making a story about some medieval Arab warrior. And he's making another movie about the foundation of the city of Timbuktu. Now, these will be all, African casts in these things. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, that is awesome, because here they won't tell those stories. They act as if only white people have some interesting stories to tell. And it's like, okay, and I'm the racist because I'm complaining?
Exactly. The thing is, Tolkien, he even wrote it into it for the elves. There's a reason why, unlike Forgotten Realms, Dungeons and Dragons, where they came up with Drow and came up with this thing behind it. For Tolkien, the elves were created. They loved the starlight. It was always about that. And he laid out the entire history. It made sense why there were no dark elves in that universe. So we're not the ones with the issue. We're the ones taking incredibly detailed canon information with a plethora of endless characters, and we're coming up with all new characters, and we're just going to say, it's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're going to be sadly disappointed at the reception when this thing starts coming out.
Yeah. Well, everybody who's been ratioing the trailers They're deservedly so.
And the thing is, even the white characters don't look very interesting.
Right.
No,
It all looks tedious.
no. The problem is what they did was they're like, we want Game of Thrones,
Oh, right.
but we can't use Game of Thrones. So what can? Oh well, Tolkien's out there, so let's just use Lord of the Rings, and we'll kind of turn it into Game of Thrones, and we'll just go our own direction.
Well, apparently the member of the Tolkien estate who was the nitpicker, who wanted only quality entertainment, which is why there's never been a Lord of the Rings comic book. He hated comic books. Well, he died, and new people took over, and all they care about is the cash. They don't care about the quality anymore.
Yeah, because they had the one, was Ship or Shipley, and I know he had gone out because he was the one that was, when they were creating all the stories and stuff, he was kind of their fact checker and trying to keep the lore in there. And he had gone, was it in Germany? He had given a speech and said something, and apparently Amazon didn't like that. And really within 48 hours, I am no longer employed by Amazon on it. So then they hired somebody as the fact checker who really has no qualifications or knowledge of it in the first place. Kind of like your comic guy who pulled it off the shelf to flip through it. That's not a fact checker.
Well, that's a good point, because relating to what he said, that's like hiring somebody to write Batman, and you're like, so you've read a lot of Batman, right? Blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, not really. And the guy just pulls the who's who and goes, here, just read this page.
Right.
That's all you need to know. And it's like, well.
No, you need to, I mean.
Thomas Shipley. Thank you. I was close.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I mean, yeah, you guys know, I mean, you get into comics, you get in as a lifer. I mean, you like them since you were a kid. You know everything about them. You're steeped in them. You live them. And now you got tourists coming through to create this stuff, and they're on their way to better jobs. They don't really give a crap. They're not here for the duration.
No, and they also want to, push whatever agenda, whether they realize they're doing it or not. Because I think some people, they might not even realize it because they're not steeped in it, and they're just like, well, I like this. Why can't Bruce Wayne like this? And it's like, well, I don't know. Bruce Wayne doesn't like My Little Pony. That's why. Well, he never liked me. What are you talking? A
lot of it is intentional, though. I mean, they think, well, this will offend readers who don't agree with our worldview.
Right.
Well, you're not supposed to put out comics that make your readers feel bad. Comics are universal. They're all inclusive. And one thing I've learned over years of writing them and meeting fans and meeting readers and even understanding why I like them is we project a lot on these characters. We project a lot on Spider-Man and Batman, and we put ourselves in their place, and you have to leave the reader room for that. If you start having your characters spout off very specific political views or whatever, you're removing that enhancement. You're no longer like, I can't project myself on Captain Potato Salad anymore, because he's pro-abortion,
Right. Yep. Right.
Why does he have to be pro-abortion? It has nothing to do with the story. I just want to see him, kicking some bad guy's ass for 22 pages.
Right.
But even from a business perspective, if I'm the editors, I'm the CEO, I'm the executive board members of Marvel, DC, and stuff, we're like, the whole point is to grow the industry, which means part of it is being inclusive. But in order to do that, you've got to put out stuff that people want that aren't divisive. That means it's just like what they did with Star Trek and Star Wars. They purposely put stuff in there to, quote unquote, we wanted to piss off the fans. Why would you do that? Because those fans not only are buying your comics, they're renting your movies, they're buying your toys, they're taking them to your, Disney kingdoms. And I'm like, they're the ones that are spending the money, and that's who you want to piss off. And now you're going to turn around and cater to a very subgroup that doesn't spend a lot of money and would rather download all the stuff for free off the internet.
Well, I mean, the problem with comics is from the very beginning, they never knew how to market themselves, and they never understood their audience or even tried to understand their audience. I mean, this is an industry that, didn't understand when they didn't get many returns on Action 1 that Superman was a hit. You know,
Right.
They were like, they just put out this thing. They didn't give a crap. And then they realized, hey, none of these issues are coming back. There's no return. Hey, they like this guy. We need to do more of this guy, right? And so they were always about the money finding them. They never went out and found readers. They just would throw crap against the wall. If you liked it, you liked it. You didn't, you didn't. And the only 2 times that I can think of where they actually actively marketed for new readers is in the 90s when DC started Vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
And Marvel made an effort to get into school book fairs. With they had a series about the American Civil War and they had a series about dinosaurs. And they were trying to reach out to new readers because they had the money. They were fat with cash in the early 90s.
Right.
Oh.
But nobody's done that since. Now they don't want new readers. I mean, I'm not the only guy that's going up to DC and Marvel and said we should do this. It would appeal to young adults, or it would appeal to this demographic or that demographic. No, well, we don't want to appeal to them. It's like, you know, I literally said to an editor at DC, I said, you don't want the Harry Potter audience. And they said, no. I said, that's insane.
Right.
That's insane. Because your audience is aging out.
Right.
You know, and you're not, I mean, we've skipped an entire generation of kids who just don't read comics. They read manga. They don't read American comics.
Right.
Right.
It is. It's, I was going to say, my kids were manga.
Well, that just sounds like you did a bad job.
No, I got all the comics.
I've seen
down
your
and read
man
them.
cave, Dennis. How could you even introduce them to that?
What, X-Men?
No, manga. Why would you let them see it?
What manga? I did not own manga. Now, Japanimation, Robotech, Star Blazers, TV show Shogun Warriors. Oh, yeah, I love that stuff. But that's not what they got introduced to. They got introduced to, obviously, X-Men, Dennis the Menace. You know, I had all that kind of stuff. My son wound up loving Deadpool, and then he got Deadpooled out because Marvel decided, hey, Deadpool's popular, so we're going to spit Deadpool out 3 times a month, 4 times a month like they did with Wolverine. So then he gave up on Deadpool. My daughter, she got into manga, and she has been manga ever since. And she now lives in Korea. She still reads manga.
She can't help it.
They lost it. They lost it.
I think that's the law in Korea. You have to read manga.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well, they do. We do go over, and we can get the American books in Korean. So my daughter does like to try and find them. But it is fun. It is fun just to kind of see the difference.
Yeah.
That's good.
I know.
Yeah. Getting back to the DC stuff career wise, how did after Robin? I assume so. You did the first Robin. Between that and the second Robin, is that when you started doing the Batman stuff?
Yeah, Denny asked me to do a 3-issue arc on Batman with Tom Lyle, and
okay,
so we did that. I can't remember what it was called. It was Shadow something. And I remember saying to Denny when I was done, I said, I don't know if I have many more Batman stories in me.
Oh my God! And you wrote it for so long.
11 years.
Was that the one that that arc? Real quick, is that the one Michael Golden did the covers on?
Yep.
Okay, I know that arc. Okay, yep.
Yeah, with the electrocutioner.
Yeah.
But you know, so he wasn't necessarily trying to keep me busy. He just wanted to see how I did on Batman. And then they held a Batman summit, and I was invited. You know, and I was like, well, why am I going? I tried to avoid any kind of social engagements at the big companies because I thought, I'm going to say something wrong and lose my job. I didn't go to Christmas parties, any of that stuff. Because I'm going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and that'll be the end of my career. So I'm better off just staying home. So I remember talking to Don Daly about it. He was my Punisher editor. I don't know if you ever met Don.
Yeah, I know Don.
You're a different kind of guy. Love Don, but not your normal comic book editor. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I'm just writing Robin. Why do they want to have me at the Batman Summit? I'm just going to be sitting there with nothing to do, you know. And he said, how long do you want to be in this business? And I said, to the day I die. And he goes, well, you have to go to that summit.
Yeah.
So I went, and that was when Denny introduced Nightfall. And he was telling us all about Nightfall. So we spent the whole morning at this fabulous resort with Denny telling us about Nightfall. And I'm sitting there like, I don't, what's my part in this, right? And so we break for lunch, and the other guys are leaving, and then he says, hold on, Chuck, hold on, I want to ask you something. And I thought, okay, this is where they tell me to go home. I spent the whole morning not saying anything because I don't have anything to say, right?
Yeah.
Robin, I write Robin. And so he says, do you want to take over Detective Comics? And I said, yeah.
Who was writing it before you, dude?
It was Peter Milligan was writing
Okay.
it, and then he was not happy with his stuff. And he told me, he says, Peter cannot write a heroic story to save his life. He just doesn't believe in heroes. And he says, I need somebody that believes in heroes. And so, okay, I said, great. So, then the doors were wide open, and I took every Batman job they offered me. And I, did Batman for 11 years. I've written more Batman than anybody else in the history of comics. So,
have you really?
Yep.
Oh, damn.
Yep.
So when you took it over,
or any of those guys,
when you took it over, was Graham on it at the same point?
No, I started out with Mike Netzer.
Okay.
And then Mike left, and then they were like, well, we don't know who we're going to get because we're going to lose Mike. And I said, you got to get Graham Nolan in here. And they were like, we're not sure. And I said, what do you mean you're not sure? I said, the guy is like a Batman scholar, and I've worked with him before. We have this, we're friends and everything else. I said, he's going to kill on this book. And he did. But they were a little reluctant at first, but they were trying to keep me happy. So they brought Graham on. Of course, they were never sorry.
Right.
So
when did you first meet Graham then?
I got to know about him through Tim Truman.
Okay.
Working at Eclipse, because Graham was another one of my Skywolf backup guys.
Oh yeah, that's right. Graham did do stuff. Okay.
Yeah. And I can't remember. We met at some show, probably Chicago. Met in person, and I always say when I first met him, I couldn't believe how young he was.
Yeah.
And I always say he looked like the third Everly brother. He had the hair and the whole thing going on. And but we hit it off immediately. I mean, you know Graham.
Oh yeah, Graham's a great guy.
Within 5 minutes, it's like you knew the guy your whole life. So
yeah.
But
I didn't. Oh, that's cool. So how many issues of Detective did you end up doing? Do you know the count? Or?
I did 85. I don't know how many of them Graham did. He did the majority of them.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah,
because I remember I was at the editors took me out to dinner one time when I was up at DC, and it was the younger editors, Scott Peterson and Darren and Jordan Gorfinkel. They took me to a TGI Fridays, and we're sitting there eating and everything else. And I said, man, so I'm really looking forward to my 100th issue of Detective. And they all start looking at each other. I'm so stupid. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't realize that it was like 3 weeks away from when I was going to be fired.
Oh,
so, and they knew I was going to write on. They couldn't tell me because Denny was the one that wanted to. He didn't want to tell us we were fired, but it was his job. So
did they what happened? Like why?
Well, sales are starting to fall, and somebody's got to take the blame for that.
Oh.
So then he thought, if I fire the three main Batman writers,
so he canned them all.
It's clean. He canned everybody. It was me, Doug, and Alan. We were out the door. He fired us by fax.
By fax,
because I had an outside office, and with a fax machine. At home, I didn't have a fax machine, and I was staying at home that day. And Scott Peterson kept calling me, when you go into the office? When you go into the office? He said, I don't know. I might not go in the office. Finally, like 4 PM, he goes, go into the office. So I go in the office, and this fax is waiting for me, this letter from Denny saying that Doug and Alan and I are fired. And immediately my office phone starts ringing, and it's Doug.
Oh.
And Doug says, are you going to join Alan and I on the dark side?
On the dark side.
Wow.
I said no, because I'm still writing Nightwing and Birds of Prey. I'm still a Bat writer. I just don't have a Bat title. I'm still in the office. And then he told me, I didn't want to fire you, but it didn't seem fair not to fire all of you at once. So
Wow.
His ideal thing was to fire Doug and give me the Batman book, but it's Denny. And Doug was like, how dare he fax us? And I said, it's Denny. Don't you understand? It's Denny. He's not a confrontational guy. Yeah. He's not going to call you. He's not going to tell you in person. This is just how he does it. And he's like, well, I hate him. I said, how could you hate him? We've made tons of money that we wouldn't have made if this guy didn't hire us.
Yeah.
I said, everything ends, Doug.
Right. Right.
Wow, that's like the original version of today's getting dumped by text.
Yeah.
Fired by fax. Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's better than at Marvel where they would just ghost you. They would just, hey, when do you need the next issue of, so-and-so? And they just wouldn't answer the phone. And then you would read in Diamond Previews that you were no longer working on that book.
Oh my God.
I had that happen a few times. Yeah. That's because editors are a cowardly lot for the most part.
I was going to say they don't have a backbone.
Except Larry Hama. Larry Hama would drive to the house to fire you.
Yeah. Yeah. Larry's definitely not like that for sure.
No, he totally different kind of editor. Larry is.
Actually, getting back to Marvel real quick, how did the Punisher arc with Joe Kubert come about? Because that had to be a dream come true, obviously.
Well, I started to get a reputation amongst artists, and they would stop in and go, do you have anything by that Chuck Dixon guy? And it was, I still can't believe it because the editors would tell me this. I'm like, bullshit. They go, John Severin came in and asked if you had any more stories by me. So it was John Severin, John Buscema, Russ Heath, and Kubert. And finally, Kubert came in and said, I want to do a Punisher thing. Could Chuck write me a 5-issue arc? I'm like, yeah. And so I talked to Joe because I'd met him a bunch of times. I had visited the Kubert school and I had talked to him at cons and stuff. And he knew I was a big fan and all that. So, but we talked on the phone and he said, I want to work Marvel style. And I said, fine. I said, but let me put in all the dialogue so you know what the drama's about. And it worked out fine. But the weird thing is I thought about what kind of story would I write for Joe Kubert? And at the time, all that stuff was going on in Bosnia and Serbia and all that. I thought, what if the Punisher mixed it up over there? Because I knew Kubert was Croatian.
Right.
Oh. And then I thought, I want to do a story with a lot of weather, like rain and snow, because Kubert does that so awesomely. He makes it real believable. So the first time I talked to him on the phone, I said, look, I got a few ideas. And Joe says, well, before you get into your ideas, I like to do stories with a lot of elements in it. Rain, snow, wind. I'm like, okay. And he says, have you been seeing in the news what's going on with the former Yugoslavia? I'm like, yeah. Could we set a story there, like in Sarajevo? And I'm like, okay. And then Joe says, now what were your ideas? I said, I don't have any more. That's it. So, but we dug working together, and he wrote a really nice letter, and he left a really nice answering machine message, which I immediately took the tape out of the machine. It's back when they had tape. I pulled it out of the machine, and he gave me the thumbnails for the story,
nice,
which is, I understand, unheard of. So
I've got that trade paperback. I bought it single issues when it came out, but I have the trade next to my desk just because, I've got that. I've got the Hawkman stuff. Joe's just the go-to when you need just that spark.
Well, to have a career that long, and his work was fresh right up to the very end.
Oh yeah,
it never looked phoned in or tired, and he was always playing with storytelling. He never rested. There's always trying to do something new. I mean, that's something to admire.
You might know this, you might not. Do you know how long it took him to do each issue?
No.
Oh, that would be for some reason in my mind, I'm like, he gets your script, and then a week later he's like, all right, here's that issue. Give me another one.
Yeah,
just like a week later.
Yeah, I know he was fast. I mean,
oh yeah.
but I was, you know me, I wrote so far ahead of schedule. I had the whole 5 issues done, written.
Oh, yeah.
Before he ever, so it wasn't like, hey, Joe needs more stuff. So I just never knew how quick the stuff was coming in. Plus, I was doing so much at that time, I couldn't keep track of where all the pencilers were.
Right. What was the John Buscema one?
It was a 5-issue arc where the big scene was the Punisher ends up being taken captive to a Caribbean island and put on basically turns into a slave on a sugar plantation.
I'm trying to think. Is that
it was a 3-issue arc, except Buscema was getting toward the end of the 3rd issue, and he said, "Could this story go on a little longer?" Because he was enjoying it.
Really?
Yeah. So I wrote 2 more issues. But I wrote him kind of a Conan story because the scene I really wanted to write was 2 guys having a fight in a sugarcane field. Because if you've ever seen a sugarcane field, it's basically daggers sticking up out of the ground where the cane's been cut. And I got to do a scene where, Punisher's duking it out with this guy. And in the first one, the fall dies because they're going to be speared through with these things.
Right. That's the one where they're like on that log over the pit or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah.
And Buscema does the Punisher symbol on a Gaia Barra camp shirt, which I loved.
Yeah.
Because Punisher's mostly in civilian clothing for that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
That had to be cool working with him as well. Did you do plot style for that or full script?
I did full script, and we did that Punisher Western together too.
Okay, see, that's what I thought. I thought because I didn't want to go, you did the Western as well, then have you go, no, that was somebody else. But I'm glad my instincts were correct because I have both of those next to my desk as well, the Western one and the other one. So
yeah, because the first time I worked with him was on Savage Tales, the rebooted Savage Tales that Larry Hama edited. That was all Westerns and war stories and stuff. And what happened was I wrote a 10-page Western story, handed it in to Larry. Larry hated it. He hated the story I wrote. And then Buscema came around and said, "Do you have any Westerns?" And this was the only one he had.
No way!
So Larry gave Buscema this Western called The Regulator. And, he took it and drew it, even though Larry hated the story. Larry he told me on the phone, very long phone conversation, detailing everything he hated about the story.
No way. That is awesome.
And then,
let's see.
The Russ Heath arc I did on Punisher Warzone was Fortress Miami. And that's one I proposed. I proposed that martial law was declared in Miami, and they said you can't do that because that's ridiculous. That could never happen. This is the middle of the cocaine wars,
right?
And then, like 3 weeks after the issues came out, they declared martial law in Miami.
No way! That is just. Oh, wait, what does he say? Marcus says Andy has the best next to his desk. What's he talking about? I don't know what he's talking about.
Probably me. I'm next to your desk.
Oh, you are next to my desk. Yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, Marcus says he remembers the splash page of one of them. How did a couple more things I want to touch on Bane, and then I want to get to the novels and stuff. How did so everybody know? I mean, because I kind of know. I don't think Dennis does though. How did Bane come about?
Well, we started on Nightfall at that first summit, but it was all setting Nightfall up. And the fans don't realize, if you go back and read the issues leading up to Nightfall, you realize we were up to something. We were setting something up. And then we knew we had this bad guy was going to break Batman's back. Mm-hmm. And we knew that he was addicted to venom and that he had to be Batman's physical and intellectual equal. But we didn't know anything else about him. And we reached a point where all the writers were starting to catch up with the material, and we really needed to create this guy. And so we had a mini summit. I was living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at the time. My wife was 8 months pregnant. And so they all came to me, and they stayed at this little hotel in Lancaster. And we had like this mini summit. And at the mini summit, we're starting to talk about this character. And I said, for this whole Nightfall thing to work, this is like 2 years of continuity. I mean, we're really all in on this Nightfall idea. I said, for this to work, this villain has to click. I mean, they got to like him. They got to relate to him. He's got to be Dr. Doom. It's got to work. I said, how do you do that? How do you create a character that has to be popular to make this thing work? Because usually we're just throwing crap against the wall. I said, well, we can't do that this time. And then he says, well, if you think it's going to be so hard, then you go home and do it. And we stopped talking about it. He just sent me home. And so I started thinking about it. I knew Graham was going to draw it.
Right.
I was going to do the Vengeance of Bane special. And so I called Graham. We start kicking some ideas around. He comes up with a Luchadora idea. And then I'm like thinking out loud on the phone. He still doesn't have a name. So I get the idea, the germ of an origin. And then I go to the thesaurus and I look up the word evil. Ooh, Bane. That's a cool name. So I call Scott Peterson at DC and so I want to call this guy Bane. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And he turns to the other guys in the office. He wants to call him Bane. And I hear, listen, no, we hate that name. We'll come up with something better. But they never did.
They forgot when they went home. They're like, oh, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Bane, okay. I mean, 2 days later, they're like, oh, is that Bane script almost done?
No way. That's funny. So
did you say, you remember it was the 90s, the characters were called, Dark Wolf, and it was all, Rob Liefeld was coming up with one name after another. I think he had a machine that would combine nouns to come up with character names.
Oh, that's so cool.
That is.
So after CrossGen, because if I remember right, at CrossGen, you weren't into the novels yet, right?
No.
Or were they just rolling around in your head?
Not really. No. I wasn't thinking about novels at all. Was it
one of those things where it was more of, I got to do something? I've always...
I wasn't getting enough comic work. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And, I was kind of in my wilderness period. After CrossGen, I wasn't welcome at Marvel at all.
Right.
I really wasn't welcome at DC except for a job here and there. And I was like, man, I need monthly income. And Nick Barucci from Dynamite called. And Osama bin Laden had been killed the day before. And he said, we want to do a comic book about the SEAL teams to take advantage of Osama bin Laden being killed. And we want to have it ready for Christmas. And this is like September.
Yeah.
And he said, could you write a novel in 30 days? And so I've never written a novel. Well, but could you do one in 30 days? And I said, well, if I'm ever going to write a novel, this is the challenge I need. I said, yeah, okay. So I start writing this novel. And then like a week later, this editor calls me from Dynamite and says, we haven't seen an outline yet. And I said, you can have an outline or you can have the novel, but you can't have both.
I'm 30 days.
I'm 3 chapters in, man, and I ain't stopping. I handed it in 28 days, and it sold like a house of fire for them. We did 5 more, and then I realized, why am I writing these for another person? Another company. I could do this. I could put these on Amazon myself.
Wait, what were they called?
It was SEAL Team 6. And I think they were just numbered. I don't think they had titles.
God, I don't remember those at all.
No, they're real. I mean, I did tons of research and everything else. And they sold better than any novels I've ever done because it was the ebook gold rush was going on.
Oh.
And then I started writing the Bad Times books, the time travel books. And that was kind of the tail end of the gold rush. And then I moved on to the Levon Cade books. Basically just to have work.
Yeah. Hold on real quick. Randy, thank you for the $5 super chat. Let's hope we will get a strong and sexy Birds of Prey movie someday without Harlequin. Write a script, Chuck.
Harlequin.
Don't damn me to write a script. God, that's the Hollywood people. No, please. I don't want to do
that. Yeah, well, because you've dealt with some of that.
They're all idiots. And I can say that even if they're listening because they'll go, well, he's not talking about me.
Right. So how many books of your own, because I know I read the first Bad Times. How many novels did you write before you wrote the first Levon Cade?
I probably wrote 8, including the SEAL books, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've written 6 Bad Times. I'm writing my 12th Levon now.
Damn.
And I wrote a zombie novel. I wrote a vampire novel. I've written 2 Westerns. I wrote a novel about a shoplifter. So, all over the map.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still a comic book writer. I don't really think of myself as a novelist, but I enjoy it. It's fun. It's a whole different process.
Oh, I imagine so. When you write a novel, like, I assume, well, I mean, everything seems to come easy to you. So, well, it just does. I remember a cross-gen.
It works that way.
I remember a cross-gen. You'll probably remember this story. I think it was Wade was having a problem. Mark Wade was having a problem coming up with a name for somebody or whatever. Do you remember this? He was having an issue coming up with a name of, I can't remember if it was the name of a new title or a character, something like that. And he was just getting so frustrated. And I don't know if Mark said, "What do you think, Chuck?" Or you come up with it, or if you just said, "Oh, it's not that hard, just blah, blah, blah." And it just, I think you were the one that just came up with whatever they needed done like that.
The time I remember across there was I think it was my second visit. I'd taken the job, I'd signed the contracts, and I'm visiting. I haven't moved yet. So I'm there for a few days, and I'm already writing for CrossGen. And so I'm at the office. I got nothing to do. I have no office. I have nothing to do. But I had, so I thought, well, let me work on these upcoming issues for Sigil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only computers open to me were those 2 community computers.
Yeah.
So I sit down at one of them, and I don't know who it was. I'm just scripting away. I don't know who it was, but somebody walks behind me, looks over my shoulder, and then announces to everybody, hey, he's writing. Because as you know, we had a couple of writers who didn't do enough writing.
Right.
And they had offices.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know.
Do much.
Yeah. Getting back to, so what's the main stuff you want to tell the people to be on the lookout for? Well, I can say one is, I know you're working with Graham. Are you doing 1 or 2 stories for Giant Size? 2. Okay, so you're doing 2 stories for Graham Nolan's Giant Size, Two-Fisted Manly Tales. God, I'm blanking on this. Are you working with Stroman?
Yeah. He already drew the story.
Right, he already drew it.
A week after I wrote it. So.
And then who's the other artist?
Dave Williams.
That's right. Right.
I'm doing a Viking story and a science fiction story.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple pages from each, and they look super cool. So.
Oh yeah. It's it's a terrific team. I love the idea. It's so outrageous. So flying in the face of woke culture.
Oh, dude, it's a fantastic idea. Needless to say, I backed it, and I'm looking forward to it. I know
I like the spirit of it. I like the tongue-in-cheek aspect of it as well.
Oh, totally.
Just having fun. And
then novel-wise, are you just concentrating on Levon now, or are you still doing different ones? Or
for the moment, I'm gonna. I can't say anything yet, but I'm gonna write novels of a legacy character starting next month. I'm gonna write 3 novels of a character we all know and love, and then. But yeah, mostly Levon, because I've written the 11th novel. It's not even announced yet, and I'm almost through with the 12th. So
wow.
I'm sticking with that because I'm really hoping that we get closer to a television series for this because, there's, scripts have been written and all that. So let's see where we go.
Well, those are the ones I've read the most of. I mean, I don't have a lot of time to read novels and stuff. But you gave me the vampire one, which I read. That was years ago at one of the free comic book day things.
Yeah.
I read that. I think I was looking at my shelf. I've got 4 of the Levon ones and then the Bad Times. So, I mean, they're really fast paced. For anybody that doesn't know, when it comes to Chuck's novels, they're all pretty fast paced. You click through them pretty quickly. So,
yeah, I don't write the stuff you skip. It's my innate fear of boring people. So,
well, no, I mean, you dive right into the action and stuff, and the dialogue's really good. And yeah, I mean, It's
Well,
good
thank you.
stuff.
I appreciate it.
Oh man, go ahead if you have a question.
I did, because we wound up getting on. I always like to ask, because we have to put on our way back machine hats to try and remember. As a kid, because you said you've been doing comics as far back as you can remember, what was the first comic book that you either purchased or were given that hooked you into comics?
Well, when I was a kid, comics were literally everywhere. You didn't have to buy them. If you visited somebody's house, there were comics. If you went to the barber shop, there were comics. If you went to the doctor's office, there was comics.
Yep.
They sold comics by the bundle tied with twine at the farmer's market. You could buy a stack of comics that big, for 50 cents.
Yep.
So I don't really remember my first comic. The first comic that made an impression on me was an issue of Tales of Suspense, and it was the pre-superhero monster. It was a Kirby cover, and the monster was called Spore, Sporr, and he was this like wormy, tentacled monster thing crawling out of a castle, and everybody, of course, reacting in horror in the foreground. And when I was a kid, it just blew me away. I was just like, I stared. If it was possible, stare a hole in a comic book, I would have done it. So,
do you have? I don't even know. I can't remember what I was going to ask before, but that made me think of a question. And I don't think I've ever asked you this. Do you still have like a collection of comics, older stuff, or not really?
Yeah, I've got. It's changed. I think everybody's comic collections change over the years. As they reprint stuff, I get rid of the comics and get the reprints.
Do you really?
But the majority of my collection is war and Western comics from the 50s and early 60s.
That's cool.
There was a time when we were at CrossGen was like the best time to buy comics because they were at the lowest price they would ever be again.
Yeah.
For back issues. So I bought a lot of stuff then.
That's cool. Do you know Graham showed this on a live stream one time we were doing? He has this still just I know Aaron Lopresti just wants to strangle him. He has like Hulk 1 through 6.
Yep.
Right? And they're just in bags. And it's like, dude, that number 1, and they're not mint or anything, of course, but even in garbage shape, those are expensive ass books. Yeah. And I'm just like I never, when CGC first started, I was like, I'll never get into that. Now I probably have about 15 books that are CGC because I've gone through my stuff, and Dennis is an appraiser for comics, so he'll appraise collections and stuff. So I was going through my books a year or two ago, and I've got the Avengers with the first appearance of the Vision, but they reprinted it how many times? Right. And I've got the reprint, I got the trade, so I was like, you know what? I'll get it slabbed, and it came back at like an 8.5.
Wow,
that's an expensive ass book, So I'm like, but Graham was just like, I don't care, and I'm like,
he doesn't.
I know, and it's like, I could have that. I'm sure I've got a few books that are probably a few $100 a piece, just in bags and boards. That's one thing. But when you have a book that's over a few $1,000s, you're like, yeah, I don't care. I just be like, dude, get a trade paperback as a reprint, invest the money to get those slabbed, because trust me, when you're gone, your kids can have them, and it'll just keep going up.
He's got a lot of Golden Age Batman too.
Does he really?
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a lot of like primo Golden Age Batman issues, Batman and Detective. But I've been comic shopping with Graham, and he's a tough customer. But I've never had anything slabbed. Although I have one thing I want to get slabbed. It's A Vengeance of Bane #1, signed by me, Graham, and Eduardo Barreto, and I definitely
that'd be cool.
Get that slabbed. Well,
because that's a pricey book anyhow, not just raw, I think.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure it's safe. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I would definitely do that. I was at a convention, a Wizard convention, and Chris Evans was there, Mr. Captain America, and I did, before First Avenger came out, they did like 4 10-page chapters, each with a different artist, and I drew one of them, and Tom Palmer inked it, so that was cool. But anyhow, they put out a thin trade paperback. So I was like, shit, Chris Evans is here? So I went, and I was lucky. I was able to find a copy of the trade paperback. So I had him sign it. and witnessed, and then I signed it and I got it slabbed just to give to my kid.
That's cool.
So,
yeah, the only other one I'd probably get slabbed is I have a copy of Frontline Combat #7
ooh.
from the 50s, and it is in such amazing condition. I really should have it slabbed, and it's that classic cover with the guy saying, "If there ever was a hell on earth, it's here on Iwo Jima." And
nice.
I really should get that one slabbed.
Was that back when Jack Davis was doing some of that stuff?
Yeah, but it's a Kurtzman cover, but I'm sure
Right.
Davis is inside the issue.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know the one book Dennis really wants to get slabbed, and I gave it to him and signed it and everything. It's the prize of his collection. Don't let him fool you thinking his X-Men #1 signed by Stan Lee. That's an 8.5 is the prize.
You can get them anywhere.
The prize of Dennis's collection is that ever so sought after Quasar 50 by this guy.
With the holographic
With
cover.
a holographic cover.
Oh, yes.
I found one of those. I found one in a $1 box, right? Not like I don't have a few, but I found one in a $1 box at a con, and it was in a bag, no board, but I mean, it was sandwiched so tight, the thing was flatter than hell. So I bought it for like $1. And once again, for my daughter, I signed it and I got it slabbed for her, just as a goof. It came back at like a 9.6. I was like, holy crap.
You know, everybody slabs them for different reasons. I like to slab those kind of books. So like I'm a $6 Million Man fan and a Bionic Woman. I got Lindsay Wagner to sign her #1.
Cool.
On it. You got to have a book like that. It's got to get slabbed because, she doesn't do many conventions. My son's first big convention, it was a Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica con all together. Herb Jefferson Jr., who played Boomer, he's like, hey, he talked to my son for 20 minutes. My son's like, oh, you're from the TV show. He just thought it was cool. Herb signed it and everything like that. You just got to get something like that because how many times are they going to be slabbed? Something's going to happen to that book. So you just want to do it for preservation reasons.
Yeah. I had a weird, sort of a gratifying $1 box experience. You always find your stuff in the $1 box, the quarter bin, because, you do enough work, it's going to end up there. But do you guys have Ollie's in your area?
We do. Yes. I love Ollie's.
Yep.
So my son tells me, hey, Ollie's, they got all these DC graphic novels. Like they bought a warehouse out of DC graphic. I'm like, oh man, I should go check because I'm always, at the time I was doing shows. So I thought if I can pick up like a $3 graphic novel and turn around and sell it for 10. So I go there and I'm looking through all these piles. I mean, thousands of comics. I'm looking. And I'm like, there's not many here by me. Hey, there's not many here by me. And then I want to tell the whole store, there's not many of these here by me. they sold mine.
Oh no, that's right. If I need a Stormwatch trade paperback of my stuff, I just go to Ollie's.
Or Thanos.
The Thanos hardcovers are like $5.
But what about those Quasar reprints?
They're
I'm sorry.
But yeah, Stormwatch PhD. I did volume 2, $3. Thanos, whatever. But yeah, I love Ollie's, man. Speaking of Buscema, do you have or have you seen? So obviously this is in the 50s before Marvel and all that. He did some of the movie stuff.
Yeah.
I've got those are on my list I'm hunting down. So I've got Hercules and I've got Spartacus, Helen of Troy, but he also did some westerns that I'm still trying to find as well.
He did some Roy Rogers. He did. I'm not terribly impressed with his westerns he did back then because he was like working in a house style.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing a lot of work for Dell, and sometimes they didn't want the stuff to be too exciting. But he did the Vikings too, right? Did he do the Vikings?
He did the Vikings. Yeah.
I got all of them. Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. Am I right? Did he do that one? I'm not sure.
I believe so.
He gave him a lot of that period stuff.
Yeah. The Hercules, you can definitely tell it's him.
Oh yeah.
Spartacus, you can pretty much tell as well. Helen of Troy and some of the female faces, you're like, oh, that's a Buscema face.
I'll tell you the weirdest one I saw was I bought some Hopalong Cassidy's from they were DC in the late 50s. And I really like the artwork on them. They got these great Gil Kane covers.
Yeah.
And I was reading some, and I'm like, some of this stuff's oddly familiar, these faces and angles. And I realized, my God, this is Gene Colan. This is Gene Colan drawing in a house style. He was trying so hard to hide his normal style, but it was betrayed in some of the faces. You know.
Well, I started going back and getting some of the reprints of the romance stuff. Well, I got the big showcase because it has a lot. The DC has a lot of the John Romita stuff in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And that stuff, if you know John's stuff, you're like, oh, that's John. The eyebrows on the men, just the women, and
right. There's some primo stuff in there.
Yeah.
I just wish comics were more like that, explore different genres and stuff now instead of just all superheroes.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, that was one of the nice things with CrossGen. You know? When people ask me about it and they're like, you know, do you wish it was still around or whatever? You know, I can't say, yeah, I'd still want to be working there because it's been so long, but I definitely wish it did last longer. And well, the best answer would be, I wish it was still around. And if I wasn't there, it's because I was like, I want to move on.
Right.
But I do wish it was still around because I like the books we were putting out. And it was diverse stuff, you know, genre wise.
I just wish Mark had listened to our readership more because they were telling us what they wanted and he wouldn't listen. We had a meeting sort of as the tide was rising at the company, you know.
Yeah.
He had a meeting and we were all there, you know, all the writers and stuff. And he went around the table, what is CrossGen? And every single one of us, except the person that babbled on and we didn't understand what they were saying. I think you know who. Everyone else said we're a genre publisher. We publish in all these different genres. Mm-hmm. And our readers trust us that we're going to be earnest about those genres. So if we do a private eye story, it's going to be the real deal. If we do a spy story, it's going to be the real deal. And we do the round robin around the table, and then Mark says, "Well, you're all wrong." But that's what our readers were telling us, and the pirate book proved it.
Yeah,
the pirate book, our biggest selling title, had nothing to do with anything else at CrossGen. Had no fantasy element, no supernatural element, nothing. And it was our biggest seller. And it's like, we're a genre publisher.
Right.
But he wouldn't go for it. So
he wanted all that connected sigil crap and
that no one cared about. No one cared about. Because they would tell me, you know, have you read the outlines yet? Because they gave me all these big binders. Well, no, I haven't read any of it. What do you need in this issue? What reference to the sigil verse do you? Oh, we need this. Okay, I'll put it in. I'll give you 3 panels, but I got stories to tell.
Right. Yeah. So last question, then we're going to wrap it. Because you're most known with Batman, you can't say Graham. Favorite Batman artist?
Oh, wow. Okay, other than Graham.
Yeah, well, you know, it wouldn't be fair if I said you could say Graham, so you can't say Graham.
Well, I would have to say Graham if you let me say Graham, wouldn't I? Right. Oh, man. Favorite Batman artist? Yeah, I can't think of one single. I can think of stories, but I'm not going to say Neil Adams because I didn't like his storytelling.
Right.
I liked his imagery, but I didn't like his storytelling.
Right.
But I can't, you know, Aparo, I guess, Brave and Bold.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, as soon as you said you couldn't go with Adams, my second one was going to be Jim Aparo.
Yeah, because Aparo is like Neil Adams, but he could tell a story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one of those things. You ever go through your collection and you realize, oh my God, I must really like this book because I bought so many.
Yeah, I've got a few books like that. I mean, I probably have 4 issues of 1 or 2 books because I'll just see it. I mean, it's got to be cheap. It's not obviously a book that's like, oh, that's $100. I'll just buy another one. No, it's, you know, but
like when I moved out of my parents' house, you know, you move out of the parents' house, that's the time to go through your comic book collection.
Right.
And I was like, man, I have like every issue of Brave and Bold. I must really like this book.
Oh, yeah. That was great stuff. I mean, that showcase, well, they did more than just one, but the showcase with Jim Apato's Brave and the Bold stuff. I mean, he was just hitting on all cylinders. So
he was, he was getting to work with him. He was such an awesome guy to hang out with.
Oh, that's cool.
No pretensions. No pretensions.
I don't know if many of those guys from that time period. I mean, I don't know. Like, I personally never met Jim Aparo, but do you think guys from that time period? I mean, there's probably the few, Neil, that are pretentious and stuff, but I would think for the most part they probably weren't, because it was like, man, I'm getting 35, 12 bucks, 12, going way back, 10, 15 bucks a page. I got to jam out 3 or 4 pages a day. They're not superstars. There was none of that back then.
Right.
Yeah,
I met an awful lot of those guys, and they were almost always, gentlemen. They were almost always, good guys.
Yeah.
And they didn't look down on you like you're just starting out,
Yeah.
But some of the older editors, whoa, those guys were dicks. They really were.
I don't think I ever I probably never met any of them. And the artists I met from that time period or creators were all through cons, like Murphy Anderson. I talked to him for a real long time.
Murphy was awesome. Awesome.
George Tuska was really nice. Nick Hardy, I'd see him at Heroes Con almost every year for a while there.
Yeah, Nick was terrific.
Herb Trent. I mean, Herb.
Oh, yeah. Herb was okay, man. He was a good guy. Yeah, I mean, I met Don Heck. I met Kirby. I met Don Heck. I met Steve Ditko. I mean, they were good guys.
Oh, you got to meet. You got to meet. When did you meet Steve Ditko?
I'm up at the Marvel offices. This is like late '80s, and I'm walking with Carl Potts from one place to another. And Carl says, "You're a big Ditko fan, right?" And I said, "He's the reason I write comics." And he says, "He's right over there." And Ditko was going through flat files looking for reference. And so we're walking up to him, and Carl just says out of the corner of his mouth, "Just don't bring up politics." So we went up, I introduced myself, and I had no warning. I had no time to prepare, so I didn't geek out, and I didn't babble, and I just started talking to him, and then we got into a conversation about sound effects. And he said he hated comic book sound effects unless they were absolutely necessary. And he said the thing he hated most was when Stan would write those big sound effect pages. And he says, I hated doing them. And that was it. It's just a little nice conversation. Because if somebody said to me, you're going to meet Steve Ditko tomorrow, I would have worked up like this bizarre furnace of nerd energy that would have turned me moron. Because I mean, when I met Harvey Kurtzman, another guy I idolized, I just went on like an idiot. I don't think I said any actual real words. And he was so nice and so gracious. But I'm just like, blah, 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 So.
Oh, my God. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, cool, man. Well, hey, we appreciate your time.
Sure.
It was great catching up. Hopefully I'll get down there and get to do a show or something and actually see you in person again. So
yeah. Now that the plague is over and before the war hits.
Right. There's that sweet spot right in between.
About 3 weeks.
Yeah, right in between.
Stop wearing the mask, get in the bomb shelter. You'll be all right.
Well, no, because the CDC said that you have to wear a mask if the bomb comes, remember?
Oh, yeah. I got to get a bigger shelter because I can't socially distance in mine.
Right. That's true. Well, I saw a great meme that was, if the CDC says you should wear a mask for the bomb, then this is your bomb shelter, and it was a dude in a refrigerator box. So there you go.
Oh, man.
What more do you need? Everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll be back maybe Friday. We'll pop on just so we can go over what new books Dennis got and stuff.
I got about 75% of the quick flips of the new books up already. I'll get the other 25% up tomorrow. And so those will be up and running. Just let me know which ones you want me to do full reviews on. Leave your comments below. Hit the like and subscribe button. Share it with your friends, everybody.
There you go. And we will catch you guys later. And Chuck, thanks for hanging out. Don't drop off, though. Wait till after I'm done signing off all this stuff. And let's see. I'm just looking through what outro should we play. We'll go with this one.
I thought you were going to do the Zoolander.
Oh, we can do Zoolander.
Do
Hold
Zoolander.
on.
Live
Hold
long
on.
and prosper.
Now I gotta
everybody.
find it.
You
All
got to
right.
have a win today.
I got it. F you, buddy.